Hi everyone, welcome to the London Research Acing Personalised Customer Engagement webinar, hosted in partnership with our friends at MoEngage. I'm Linus Gregoriadis, Director and Co-Founder of London Research, and I'll be hosting today's session. I'll ask Shalini, our main presenter, to introduce herself shortly, but before we start, I'll quickly run through some housekeeping points. Please note we'll be recording today's webcast and we'll create an on-demand version that will be available after the event. The session should last around 40 minutes depending on the number of questions at the end, and please do feel free to submit your questions via the webinar interface at any time during the session, and we'll try to answer as many as possible during or at the end of the presentation. And we've also got a poll question coming up, which we'd love you to take part in, so stand by for that as well. And you can access a link to the Personalisation Pulse Check Report, which Shalini will be referring to during the webinar, again through the resources section of the webinar platform. And there you'll also see another link to request a demo from MoEngage. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to Shalini, and just to say great to have everyone on board today. Hi, Shalini.
Hey, Linus. Thanks for having me join you today.
It's great to have you.
Thank you very much. I guess just jumping straight in. So just a very quick introduction from me. I'm Shalini. I head up the UK and European marketing division here at MoEngage. I've worked for a number of SaaS companies in the past, heading up their regional marketing efforts. So with regards to the agenda today, I'll first take you through some of the survey insights which Linus mentioned, talk a little bit about the challenges that we're seeing from our clients when it comes to delivering a consistent customer experience, and really what the trends and best practices are to help you take your customer engagement to that next stage. And finally, how you can create some great experiences right across that customer life cycle, and also help you to scale your strategies with a customer engagement platform. So before I go into the full details, just a bit about MoEngage in case you haven't heard about us already. We are an insights-led customer engagement platform, and our primary goal is really to help marketers deliver great experiences to their customers at every stage of the customer journey. So since starting the company 6-7 years ago, we've grown our presence globally. We have 9 offices around the world, and as you can see, we do work with a range of clients spanning from various industries. Currently, we have about 1,200 clients globally, with the size and the types really varying from all ends of the spectrum. To validate the value that our platform can drive, we've been named a leader by Gartner and G2 in categories such as mobile marketing platforms and marketing automation, analytics and personalization as well. Most recently, we were also named as a strong performer by Forrester in their cross-channel campaign management wave report. So regarding our platform, as I mentioned, it has been really built to help marketers deliver great experiences to their customers. It also gives marketers and product leaders the ability to integrate data from other sources into our platform, so that brands can have that single view of the customer. We do have a robust segmentation and personalization engine as well, so that you can personalize the communications across channels and furthermore engage with your customers through various channels such as email, mobile app, web personalization, and SMS as well. So coupled with this is our optimization feature. We do have a built-in AI engine which is called Sherpa, and that allows you to test and get insights immediately, really so that you're spending less time in the data, but are empowered by insights so that decisions can be made quickly. So that's just a bit about MoEngage and the value that we provide our clients with. So before we move on, we do have a poll question, which we'll launch in a second. And really what we're looking to do...
Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, please, Linus. No,
I thought I'd introduce the poll question, and this should be launching now on the viewers' screens. And if I can read out that question, it's what is your top engagement challenge? And the options there are getting unified customer profile data across systems, inability to move fast and create campaigns, inactionable data across systems, acquiring new customers, retaining customers, and finally, inability to personalize CX across channels. Just give the audience a few moments to type that in.
Sure.
Now let's push those results out now. Okay, we can see a range of answers there, and I guess all the options, a range of themes there. Shalini, I guess from your experience with clients, which ones are you typically first and foremost for your customers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not able to see the results on my screen, but what I can tell you is that in one capacity or another, each of our clients has mentioned either one of the options that has been given as part of the poll. I think what I've seen the most is the inability to move fast and create campaigns. And I think that's partly down to two things, one being having siloed data, and the other is just relying on so many tools and systems to come together for that to be created as quickly as possible. And the other is getting that unified customer profile data across systems. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. So I'll let you carry on now. That was just to give a bit of a flavour of what you as an audience are experiencing in terms of issues.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And I will talk a little bit later about the trends that we've seen when it does come to those top engagement channels as well. So Linus, we can go on to the next slide. Thank you. So the Personalisation Pulse Check Report, which we mentioned earlier. So some of the information that I'm about to present is directly from the report itself. And this report had been created after surveying 1,000 consumers across the UK, Germany, US, and Canada, and really asking these consumers a number of questions about personalisation and customer engagement. So what I'm going to do now is just share a small portion of the insights from the survey today, and then talk about how you can understand your customers' behaviour at every stage of their journey, which can then help you to develop your personalisation strategies.
Great, thanks, Shalini. It was great to see in the poll actually inability to personalise came out on top as the challenge. So right. This is obviously going to be very, very pertinent for our audience today.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm hoping that the insights we're about to show from the report can help give the marketers and product leaders some insights as to what it is the customers want. So jumping in, here you can see the first question we asked, which was about consumers' channel communication preferences. And what was really important here is that even though everyone tends to say that, oh, email is dead now, it's not the channel to be focusing on, that's certainly not the case here. 32% of the consumers said they prefer to communicate with brands via email. So that's really interesting. But on top of that, some of these other channels, such as social media, you would have expected to see that come up quite high, right? But Emerging channels such as mobile, text, SMS, and in-app were some of the other popular responses that we saw from the survey. So just knowing that COVID has had such a big impact, over the last year and more so than that, I guess, so many companies are now remote, which also means that more and more people are doing business online now as well. So with that said, what we wanted to do here is understand if in the last year, communication preferences of the consumer had changed at all. So you can see that mobile app is actually a new channel which has been adopted by consumers in the last year. Still very close to email with how to communicate with brand, but I thought it was an interesting one to share with you all. And I guess the key takeaway there on the previous slide would be that every consumer is different. Every consumer will have different expectations on where they want to communicate and how. For instance, I prefer checking my bank account via my mobile app, but for fraud alert, I prefer to receive text or SMS messages. So there will be cases when you have a consumer who wants to be communicated to on multiple channels, but for very, very different reasons. So before I move on to the next part of the survey insights, I did want to mention that there is that very thin line, right, between brands using data to create relevant and valuable offerings and going overboard and into the creepy territory. The entire "we want to know everything" approach is usually the downfall, is what I've seen. The immediate example that comes to mind is a Netflix tweet about the viewing preferences of a very, very small group of their subscribers. And frankly, it creeped a lot of people out that Netflix is tweeting about personal viewing preferences and have the ability to do that. I don't think they thought it would come across as creepy or that it would get as much attention as it did. But that's the thing, that whilst consumers know you are collecting their data, I think how it's used is what is really important to your customers. This image always makes me laugh because it's so true. And I'm sure we all relate to Wally here. So, how is it that actually brands are collecting so much data, yet so many brands are still sending out irrelevant messages? All that it's going to do is just disengage your customers. And that's where the question comes in of, what exactly are the consumer's preferences? And is a personalized experience important? So when it comes to preferences for personalization, what we've seen in the last couple of years is that consumers are way more savvy now when it comes to knowing what information companies are collecting on them. I think any consumer which does business or transaction with a company are giving away their name, they're giving away their address, and the products they've purchased if it's product related. And so I think for consumers to give away this information, they need to be getting something in return. So you can see here some interesting results, and it shows, again, how savvy consumers are. So some of the responses we got here were, for a personalized experience, brands should be using previous purchase history, which makes sense. You wouldn't want to receive a communication for an item you've already purchased and then receive another communication for this again, especially if that item's gone on sale, right? Known interest, that's another one for people who are reading and consuming information. They're expecting that information to be used so that the next experience with a brand is personalized. And obviously, name is a given. I think most marketeers have been personalizing emails with your name for a while now. So there are some other interesting insights here for everyone. I think the important thing is that there are expectations that consumers want to have that really great experience with your brand. And they're hoping for brands to use data in the right way and give them the right experience as well. Moving on to the consumer's frustrations with brand experiences. The top three areas of frustration were brands sending inconsistent messages across channels, which was closely followed by when brands sent irrelevant messages, and lastly, the message frequency itself. So the big takeaway here is that you do risk frustrating your consumers, and that can be a major cause for losing a customer. So with that said, it's important that brands are taking into consideration each individual's expectations when developing your engagement strategies. So looking ahead to when we all go back to a pre-COVID world, consumers are probably going to be engaging with brands across both traditional and online channels. I think we can all expect that, especially with the lockdowns that we had and what that did in terms of the buyer behaviour changing. So with that bigger shift happening towards a hybrid model of offline and online, what brands need to do is ensure they're set up for success and they can communicate through multiple channels. But most importantly, they can get that full view of the customer and how the customers are interacting with their brands, using that information to ensure that the communication they're sending out meets what the customer wants from the brand. So the research itself, when it came to the Personalised Pulse Check Report, it really did provide the MoEngage team and I with actionable insights, which we've been passing on to our clients and industry friends. So whilst consumers have high expectations when it comes to personalised communication, each individual customer has a unique set of preferences, which range from where they shop, whether it's online, offline, or both, the types of content they want to receive, and the frequency of communication. So at the end of the day, what's important is to recognize that delivering a consistent, relevant, and well-timed experience is what will help brands retain customers while seeing more from their engagement strategies in terms of ROI. Brands today, we all know, have a really tough job to stand out from their competition. But with personalization and omnichannel marketing, they can engage customers and differentiate themselves from the competition as well. So we spoke a bit earlier about some of the challenges that we've seen when it comes to customer engagement, and I think some of these challenges will also resonate with the audience today. I think a lot of people today can probably agree that delivering a consistent experience is really, really hard to do. Personalization has been a buzzword for many years now, but it's so important, and I still think that for many brands, they haven't been able to deliver on that dream of giving that one-to-one personalization to their customers as yet. So I want to highlight just some of these challenges, because these are often challenges that we all hear about. So if you are someone who says less technical, you may be relying on technical leads or developers to bring your campaigns to the market. That could be building an email template. It could be a new landing page. And you're burdened by the fact that you can't move quick enough to get new programs launched, or you have way too many marketing tools. I think we've evolved so quickly in this digital world, so we have CRM, we have a marketing automation system, we've got so many different tools out there, and that's often requiring marketers to duplicate their efforts. So if you want to send, say, a push notification campaign and a text SMS campaign, you're going to have to do that twice because you're using two different platforms, right? So similarly, because of all these tools, you have data that lives everywhere. And I know that as a marketer, I've been frustrated by this in the past. I mean, I have to look at my Google Analytics to get my web data. I have to look at my marketing automation system to understand how are people engaging through their life cycle with us. So there are so many different touch points to be aware of. And as you add more channels, it does become difficult to personalize that experience because you've got data that's living everywhere. And really what's more challenging here is when that data is inactionable, right? It's hard to find, it's hard to decipher. So These are the challenges that we've often heard about. And again, I'm hoping some of the information I provide today will help the listeners to resolve some of these problems. So I want to talk about the trends which are driving customer experience, because these are trends that we often hear about, really from the market, but generally too. When it comes to the holistic customer view, for instance, this is really bringing in data from multiple sources, really allowing you to have that understanding of the customer and how they're engaging with your brand and what channels and content they're engaging with. Excuse me. The second trend that's driving customer experience is AI. I know that AI can be scary for some people, but it doesn't mean that it's replacing what us humans are doing. It complements what we're doing, if anything, so that we can be more effective. We can get all the insights and data at our fingertips so that we can make better informed decisions. Digital transformation is another buzzword, but something I think we can agree that's been a priority for brands. If there were digital initiatives that were more long-term, they absolutely had been accelerated, because brands had to start communicating with customers mostly digitally, especially when we had the lockdowns and people couldn't go places. So that's another trend that we're seeing. And personalization, of course, that's what this presentation is about. How do you engage with each customer in a unique way? And lastly, omnichannel. Going back to the research, you saw consumers were choosing different channels, right, on how they want to communicate with brands. And I think this is only going to get more spread out. Consumers will have their own preferences, and if brands want to succeed, they need to be able to understand that each consumer is different, and having a strategy that is most effective for them, that's going to be a big focus. So one of the most important best practices that I want to talk about is getting that single unified view of your customers, and that too with a platform for marketing, insights, and engagement. But really, by knowing the user first, you're going to be set up for success when you move on to creating your customer engagement strategies for each customer type. But really, if you don't know your customers as yet, that could be a downfall that you may face as you create those campaigns. So when you're building this engine and you're trying to get that holistic view, obviously user properties such as name, age, email are very foundational. And most of us have this already in our CRM or marketing automation tool. But there are so many other criteria which are just as important. For instance, getting a view of enriched data, such as how many times has a customer been on your site, excuse me, or the number of transactions. That's really going to help you decipher their level of loyalty to your brand. Maybe the platform you have that can also provide you with RFM data, which is recency frequency monitoring. And that can help you see where each customer is in relationship with your brand. And then user interactions. I feel that's a real key component that brands should have and marketers should have. Because not only is this going to help you see how customers are interacting with you, but it's also going to be a gauge for where they are in the buying cycle. And that's going to mean that you can engage with customers in a more focused manner, providing the customer with the information they need to help them make their first purchase, for instance. And finally, campaign interactions. So you should be able to see already what are the preferred channels of your customers and what are the ways of engaging which the customer prefers. Maybe they don't open your emails, but they check out your in-app messaging every single time. I mean, that's the type of data that's going to help you build strategies which are most relevant for various segments of your customer base. Wanted to talk about the customer life cycle, and there are many ways to look at the customer life cycle. And customers are more connected now than ever. They're going to be engaging with your brand across multiple digital channels, sometimes at the same time. It could be your website, it could be social media, They might step into your store and look at their mobile phone whilst there to check out the prices or to request vouchers, and eventually they may make the purchase over mobile because they've seen a better offer somewhere. And so at MoEngage, what we've done is we've mapped out a customer lifecycle journey that really shows the best engagement channels at each of these different stages, all the way from awareness through to conversion and loyalty. And the aim here is to deliver value. It encompasses 4 stages. Obviously, it's not a one-size-fits-all model that we've built, but it's something we've seen work really well, and it can be customized, especially if you're starting your life cycle planning. If you are interested, we do have a guide on how to implement this, which gives strategies and best practices, both for the digital and physical and in-store engagement. So if you're looking to get this guide, feel free to drop me a note and I can send that guide over to you.
That's great. That looks like a great resource, and I love that life cycle chart, Shalini. It's worth reminding the audience, actually, if you've got any questions about the presentation that you want answered during this session, then please do input them on the webinar platform, or if not, please do, as Shalini said, feel free to follow up with her with any specific questions or requests for the resource she just mentioned.
Thanks, Linus. Yeah, so talking about the customer journey in a bit more detail, I want to talk about the multi-channel part of the journey. And as you can see here, that the first phase itself is the discovery phase. And that's when a customer or prospect comes into contact with your business, which could be through any online or offline medium. And a great example of different kinds of marketing tactics that you can apply here could be events, it could be online searches, TV ads. It's really a great time to leverage promotional codes or special discounts if, say, you're in the e-commerce or retail space, really to encourage prospective customers to check out your brand. And then the second stage is the act stage. And that's where a customer will acquire first product or service from you. So similarly, this is a great opportunity to stand out, to offer that relationship, to show that you care, to have that personalized engagement. And so considering tactics such as personalized messages across different channels, or considering remarketing when you've had someone come to your website or someone engage with you via email, or another channel offering them something based on the content they've consumed previously. And then following on from that is the convert stage. And this is the one we all want, right? We want people to buy from us. So how do you turn a one-time customer into a loyal customer? We've seen marketers using various tactics here, really personalized marketing tactics around omni-channel. And so the more personalized communications you can offer, that ups the chances that your customers are going to turn loyal, because they're going to see a difference from one brand to another that isn't personalizing to their experience at all. And then lastly, there's engagement. So going back to the Personalisation Pulse Report, consumers show that they want a personalized experience, right? So how should you be thinking about that? You can think about it from different channels. Maybe you have certain consumers who like to receive content on different channels. Maybe you've got consumers who don't necessarily engage with you every day. They engage with you, say, monthly. So really think about that frequency of your communication. Also think about the different ways that you can customize the experience for them, and in return get that holistic view. And so I know saying this is easier said than done, right? I mean, the next step from here is, how do you scale this? Let's say you've got 100 consumers, or let's say you've got 10,000 consumers that you need to personalize experiences for. How are you going to be able to scale that? So I'm going to talk a little bit about our platform shortly, but the main focus is going to be on the best practices that you should be looking at to scale your personalization strategies. Before going into that, I just want to take a step back and look at the layers of personalization. And based on insights and user trends, marketeers, product managers, they use this data to send relevant content recommendations to each user, announce the latest releases, personalized communication, depending on the properties that we'd spoken about earlier. So whilst personalizing your communication, it's always a good idea to look at it in layers. And there's just one way that you can visualize that information. I'd say segmentation really does sit at the core of personalization. The better you segment, the more that you segment, the more relevant your communication is going to be. So looking at the image here, you can see that a customer's geographical location can be used to make to really deliver those real-time and highly relevant messages that drive better engagement, say at physical touch points. So you can start with your segmentation here, for instance. Next, you can leverage your customers' past behaviors, say on your mobile app or website, and gauge content affinity there. Moving up from that, using your customers' preferred language as well to communicate with them. I think brands that communicate in vernacular languages tend to have a higher recall rate than those that don't. So today's smartphones, laptops, desktops, and consoles, they do support languages that about 98% of people all over the world would speak fluently. And adding the first name of your customer in the email, text message, or push notification, it's a small thing, but it can significantly increase your campaign's performance. And then lastly, pick the right communication channel. Your customers will not step up and tell you their preferred channel. Use the data to understand this. Look at the performance of your emails, push notifications, in-app messages, and get that better picture of how each customer prefers to receive your messages. So with that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you can understand the customer's behavior and how that can then be used at every stage of their journey, but also when it comes to your engagement strategies and your personalization campaigns as well. So understanding the customer behavior at every stage is a really powerful way for brands to get the most from their customer engagement strategies. Brands today, they have the ability to analyze, segment, engage, personalize, and optimize customer engagement across omnichannel touchpoints to create those deeper, more meaningful connections with their customers. So at the moment, you could be doing this manually, or it could well be through a customer engagement platform. Either way, I'm going to dig into some of these best practices. But whilst, again, this is from the view of MoEngage, you should be able to apply some of these scalable strategies to your in-house team or your current platform. I mentioned earlier that rather than planning your campaigns first, you need to understand your users first and foremost, absolutely. So creating that unified profile view, that's going to help. But another best practice is to layer on user path analysis across the customer journey. And what I mean by that is having that user path analysis, that's going to help you uncover and visualize the paths your customers follow whilst navigating your customer touchpoints. And this really just helps to take the guesswork out of customer analysis and allows you to stay on top of changing trends without drowning in data. But it's really by getting the precise insights from your data that you're going to have a better sense of your customers' behavior. You can see on the screen at the moment that you should be able to easily spot events that lead to, say, uninstalls of your mobile app. It can help you to spot churn before it happens, or potentially uncover problems such as a suboptimal onboarding for your customers. They may have difficulty in finding relevant products or services. So those are just some of the areas that the user path analysis can really help the listeners with. Another best practice, I feel, is understanding and segmenting your customers, which I spoke about a bit earlier. For automation, consider a platform that has built-in RFM analysis. It's a widely used marketing model for behavior-based customer segmentation. And again, it's going to help you answer questions such as, who are your loyal customers? And which customers are most likely to churn, say, in the next 30, 60, 90 days? And what that insight is going to do is just provide you with the insights to see, how can I re-engage with this customer who may be about to churn? Maybe I can offer them, a discount. It could be a special VIP offer for the most loyal customers, for instance. But by understanding and segmenting your customers, that's the type of data that you should be able to get access with. And then engaging with your customers with a multi-channel strategy. You saw from the survey results that every consumer is unique. While you'll always have a best performing channel, so to speak, you need to be able to create a relevant experience across channels. And that can be challenging to do if your tools, data, and marketing operations are siloed. So I recommend that the listeners work with a platform that can help you easily scale your multi-channel strategy by providing all of the engagement channels such as email, mobile, in-app, web, along with a built-in AI to help automate and optimize and predict the most optimal personalized experiences for each individual. So managing your strategy this way means you can create a streamlined process through one platform rather than having data and strategies spread across a number of tools. Great. So this comes to the end of my part of the presentation slides. As we said, the Personalisation Pulse Check Report is now available, which you can access from the resources section. In the meantime, I know we're about to go into Q&A, but if you do have any questions that you want to take offline, feel free to drop me a message and we can chat.
Thanks, Charlene. That was all really clear and insightful. Some great slides and really good insight and a big help for those listening, I'm sure, in thinking about how they can apply customer engagement and personalisation best practices to their own organisations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to see some questions from the audience. I think we'll take one from Janine first, and she's asking what advice you'd give to a company like theirs at the start of their customer engagement journey about how to get going with some of these themes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks for the question, Janine. I say, look, first and foremost, get to know your customers and their behaviors first. I think as marketers, we often get ahead of ourselves and begin creating the campaigns and promotions. But before you even get to that stage, just take a step back, look at the data that's available to you, and try and build, what those customer profiles are. What are those individual preferences and habits that you can cater to? Really learning about the customer, do that first, look at their engagement, prepare channels, and then use that information and have that weave into your customer engagement plans, I would say.
Okay, that's a great answer. And a question from Vinay. He's asking, what's the best way to get buy-in from senior management within our business for investment in personalisation and customer engagement technology and associated resources?
Love this question. As marketers, we're also used to, going to senior management, the exec teams, and having to justify certain projects or resource requirements that we have. And talking from personal experience, one thing I always do when requesting budgets or resources is I always back myself with the data. Think about what your exec team will care most about. which would typically be revenue, acquisition, retention, and where costs can be saved as well, right? And I guess that's the beauty of personalization. It really does lend to acquisition and retention, especially retention. I recently read that about a report which looked at the impact of personalization communication. And personalized communication can actually increase retention by 20% alone. And that's a big number right there. I mean, it's also less expensive
Wow.
to retain customers. Yeah, right. It's not just less expensive to retain the customers than acquiring new ones. The other suggestion I'd say is, look at the amount of time that's being spent in the data, especially if that data is siloed. It's just going to become much more difficult to look at personalization and customer engagement. Your customer engagement platform should have everything in that one place where you can analyze your data, you can create the campaigns, you can understand the customer journey, and have AI work for you on optimizing the campaigns. And I think just hitting on those points and showing where money is being used when it comes to additional time and resources, that should help you make that business case. And then that would be a win-win for your exec team, is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I get the impression that broadly speaking, across different industries, things have moved on quite a lot in the last few years in terms of awareness and knowledge about how good digital engagement platforms can improve customer experience and ultimately improve revenues and the bottom line. But as you say, that it's important to have that business case, because of course executive teams are weighing things up all the time about where to prioritize and why.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, if it is a challenge to convince the exec team, even after backing yourself with the data and such, there are options which many technology companies provide, whereby you can almost do like a proof of concept campaign with them. Proof of concept project, I should say. And I mean, it's no risk, right? Run the project, see what impacts it's had on the ROI of your campaign, see what impact it's had on your team in terms of the amount of time and resource it's saving. And right there, that's a ready-baked business case for you to then take to exec team to justify why you should continue with the chosen technology partner that you're having to justify.
Thanks, Charlotte. And I think we've got time for a final question, which has come from Donna, and this speaks to one of the options for the poll question about disconnected data sources, and she's asking if there are any quick fixes for companies wrestling with different customer data sources across the business. I guess she's referring to, over time, different databases build up, different marketing tech platforms, CRMs, and organizations can be siloed, as we know.
Yeah, it's a frustration that I hear often, when speaking with various brands. But I think if you are struggling here and you've got so many siloed data points, I'd say look at what's the most important data points for you and the teams that you're working with, such as the product team, customer service team, and see how those data points can be layered together. It can be done in a manual way, yes, but I would say, look, if possible, try and shift to an all-in-one solution where you can unify your data. I think that's going to be really key. There are so many platforms and different options there for companies that are just starting out, on the SMB side, the more enterprise businesses. But I'd say whatever the platform is that you end up going for, just ensure that they give you that flexibility when it comes to the amount of data it can take, and then also how that data can be sliced and diced too. So that would be my suggestion. But to put simply, then I'd say, look, go back to your teams, see what are the most important data points for the key teams, and start at least layering those together where you can.
Okay, fantastic. I think we'll have to take a wrap there. And as mentioned to the audience, please do feel free to get in touch, take it offline if you've got any specific questions. I would like to thank Shalini and MoEngage very much for partnering on this webinar, and also for you who've tuned in to take part and submit answers to the poll question and for the Q&A. And please do bear in mind that the whole webcast will be archived and available for future viewing. And we'll send you the link to access the on-demand version via email, and obviously encourage you to share this information with colleagues and others. So finally, thanks once again, and hopefully we'll see you again on our next webinar. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.